we will continue with the final presentation or the final reading of this festival. With me are two lovely ladies. I will try to pronounce the names correctly, but it's Sigrún Pálsdóttir, am I right? And Ásta Fanney Sigurðardóttir. Okay, I know that Dottir is daughter, right? Okay. Welcome to Buksa and welcome to the festival. Sigrún has just received her translation into Croatian of her novel. You can find it in the bookshops in Zagreb. And we are still waiting for Ásta Fanney's translation of her poetry in Croatian, apart from the one that we translated in our anthology. So Sigrún holds an Oxford PhD in History of Ideas, and she works at the university in Iceland. She's an editor of a magazine on Icelandic history. Am I correct? Still? Are you still the editor?
No, I left the job.
You left the job just before you came here?
No, some years ago.
Okay. And she has a peculiar interest in biography. And she authored several books on biography. Tara, the Bishop's Daughter, in 2010. And Insecure Seas, Uncertain Seas, in 2013. Her first novel is Kompa. It's history, Amos, from 2016 and 2019. She authored her second novel in 2019, and it's Embroidery, the title of the novel, and her latest work is Boudoir. And Ásta Fanney is a poet. She's a multidisciplinary artist and a musician. She has a degree in visual arts. Right, and she has exhibited her work in group exhibition and solo exhibition. And her first book of poetry was published in 2012, and she has won different prizes for poetry, and she was nominated for the Bernard Heidsieck in Pompidou in 2021. The International Poetry Award. So far she has published 4 books, from experimental avant-garde to the Diary of Dreams. And dreams is one of the topics that we are going to talk about. Welcome, but we want to, we were just talking now that maybe we would like to change the script a bit and start with the reading and then talk to Sigrún and Ásta Fanney. So maybe Ásta, you could begin with reading.
Yes.
To introduce us to the dreamland.
Yes. I was talking to my lovely translator, and because I'm really excited to hear the poems in Croatian, so I kind of tricked her into reading one of the poems, or like an introduction to a poem that is also a poem, actually. So maybe you start reading one in Croatian and then I finish it.
Yes, I hope this is working. Okay, so the title of this group of poems is in Croatian Tri nejasna uvoda za 3 treperava plava svjetla. Eða á íslensku þrír óljósir ingangar fyrir fjólblikkandi bláu ljós. So the first one, uvod u prvi treptaj. Na avionu od papira su poruke i još poruka. I u zraku, prije no što se sudari sa zidom, mi smo živi. Dok su poruke na putu, postojimo. Samo te 2 sekunde u letu, prije pada, dovoljne su da udahnemo i izdahnemo. I usišemo čitav svijet kroz oči do želuca. Ondje se skupljaju slike, oblažu sluznicu, utiskuju se pod kožu.
It's beautiful to hear it in Croatian. I get really excited. Okay, so I'm going to read everything in Icelandic, and you have the translations, yeah. 3 óljósir inngangar fyrir 3 blikkandi blá ljós. Inngangur að fyrsta blikki. Á skutlunni eru skilaboð og enn önnur skilaboð og í loftinu áður en hún klessir á vegginn erum við lifandi. Á meðan skilaboðin eru á leiðinni erum við til. Aðeins þessar 2 sekúndur á sviði fyrir brotlendingu eru nægar til að anda inn og út og sjúga allan heiminn innan augun og niður í maga. Þar safnast myndirnar saman, þekja slímvegginn innan frá, þrykkjast undir húðina. Blá ljós fyrsta blik. Skær álftir urða skeifur vindfættra, fylgja lokbrámað óravöku vatni, hvarmað fólkið hélaði og lagði við hlustir, sjódraugur syngur við ullandi daun, sírena í jaðarsjón, sandmaður stráir, glitra ísperlur á jakkadraumi. Ljúft og skríðandi líkt og silkiló færist eldur undir skinnið. Tekur sér bólfestu í miðjunni. Nafli og roð, strengur kveikur, undir regnhlífinni myndunum varpað. Inngangur að öðru blikki. Ég hika með frostbitnar hendur í heitri skál, ákaft jafnvægi svíður. Í miðjum stiga man ég ekki hvort leiðin lá upp eða niður, næstum samhverft brot í laki varð að fána. Við horfðum á hann aðskilja rokið sitt hvoru megin. Næm fyrirbæri bera nafn sitt í bútum og sú þolinmæði sem það tekur að púsla saman stöfum næg til að hægja á allri hreyfingu. Blá ljós annað blik. Hnegg í fjarska, feit skautar svanur blautan sand. Dynur hófatak, snark bál og blá ljós. Krumpaður gólfdúkur galsa veislu næstum þekur vötn. Skógar álka flýgur með lappirnar faldar. Eru hafmeyjur hér? Já. Þær kafa eftir rafmynd, sagði vampíran. Hún og álka hnekkja lágt. Augu þeirra beggja blikka þegar þær dansa á línu sem skilur að venjulegt fólk og furðufugla. Til að komast til borgarinnar þarftu að klífa þennan múr með rútupenningum. Svo hlóðu þær, hneggjuðu, tókust á loft, blakandi hægt. Inngangur að þriðja blikki. Ég með sand í vasanum, ég með sand í nesti, ég með mun á sandkorni og pipar í nesti. leðursvartan sand og leðursvartan pipar, eru eyðimerkur þúsundbrota söfn, eru sandkassar það líka, eru álög á einstefnu á æðum sem enda aldrei og liggja allra síst í hringi. Stundaglasinu er hægt að hvolfa, en það rennur alltaf eins. Hvaða hugsanavilla fær mig til að borða sand aftur og aftur, er hugur segull og hjartað stál og allt hitt er sandur, sandur, sandur. Að öðru, ég hef aldrei séð vonlausa plöntu. Fjöll þurfa ekki rætur til að standa storma. Aldur er næstum öllu óviðkomandi. Andinn á sér engin takmörk. Bláljós, þriðja blik. Piparleður fólkið og veggirnir leka. Prjónar skutlufákur piparfáni morveggir leka. Viftan dælir lofti í innri storma. Rauðir slengubílar og sótið myndar húð, landslag sem felur. Óviss augu stefna á opinn þakglugga. Þegar upptök elda er á neðstu hæð, er útgönguleiðin aðeins ein. En svefn hjálpar biðklökkum. Undir öskusæng í difflisu kistu eru kolin enn heil. Bræða sand í gler. Gáru bjagað og sjá, seinta nóttu og morgun hann er umskar, svo tifar oft, undan þrýstingi breytast öll kol í gersemar. Í andrá og krúnu glerið splundrast við gal.
The Croatian translation of your poetry sound?
I actually wanted just to hear the Croatian version of the poems, because it's such a different and such a giving thing to translate poetry, because it's such a weird form also of, you know, something. I don't find it a text in such. It's just something else, and I can't define it. So hearing it in Croatian, I was really... Also, when you were speaking Icelandic, I wanted to hear you read it in Icelandic. I think it would be interesting also.
A few years back, we had the Hungarian writer László Krasznahorkai here talking about his translation into, his book and the Croatian translation of it. And he said, I didn't write a single word in this book. This is the translator's book and not mine. So I was wondering, what do you both think about the translations of your work? Now we heard Christine reading in Icelandic and then reading the English translation of it or Croatian translation. Poetry, I think, is very specific when it comes to translation, but also prose. How do you relate to your work in translation? Do you have a feeling that it's out of your control and you don't connect to the text, or?
Well, I must say, seeing this translation, I've never been so grateful. Is that working?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've never been so grateful because I've often regretted that I speak so few languages.
Really, we all do.
Yeah. Yes, I'm so grateful that I don't understand this language, and this book was out is soon out in France, and I've often regretted that I don't speak better French than I do. Yes, so because when my books have been translated in in English, I work quite closely with my translator, and I can never stop changing the sentences and having exchange, writing emails to my translator. So it's a kind of a relief, not knowing, just letting go.
Yeah,
because I don't even, I don't even understand the title. Yeah. I just see my name on the
on the cover.
Yeah.
And what about you, Ásta? How do you feel about your poetry being translated when you hear it like this?
Well, it's fantastic. But I also think I think I'm the opposite, maybe perhaps because I tend to leave the translators in the dark very much, which is the evil thing to do. But it's but because I find it like in Icelandic there, and especially in poetry, I find, or at least my poetry, there are like double meanings and maybe triple meanings to something, and I mean both meanings. Like I intertwine them, but you don't have maybe the words in the language. So I think I'm kind of excited to see what they will do. It's like a puzzle, and I'm presenting like, what will you do now? It's kind of like exciting in that way. And I think when I have understood like the English translation, I understand that, but it always adds so much. And I think I agree what you were saying, that the book is not mine anymore. It becomes someone else's, because it's also an art form of translating something. It's such an art form, and you can't take that voice of the translator out of it. So it becomes like two voices, and I'm just like, plus one in that trip, kind of like. Yes, I can come with you on this journey. It's fantastic, and it's really exciting to find.
And Sigrún, do you ever get tempted to translate into English yourself, like pieces or sentences, or rewrite
my own
the book?
work?
Yeah, your own work.
Yes, yeah. As I said, I work very closely with my translator, and I come up with a title in English and so on.
So you write it twice, once in Icelandic and the other time in English?
Yeah, I've done that with two of my books. No, it's not co-translated, but it's just the way we work together. Because often it doesn't get through, and I mean, I like the idea of just looking at it as a independent or another work. But it's hard when you understand the language.
Yes.
I'm actually
it's
also
hard to let go.
Yeah.
I'm actually really brutal about the titles. Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really like wanting to be in the collaboration of the titles. I find that kind of really important.
Yeah, it's fun too, and rewarding, and makes you think about your work over and over again.
Yeah. Rewriting it.
Yeah.
And never stopping. Yeah. Maybe we can hear your reading now.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to explain.
Yes. Please.
Yes. I So the Icelandic title is Dyngja, and the word Dyngja may refer to a certain type of a volcano, but it also means a boudoir in all its various meanings. My boudoir, to be precise, is a tiny little and very, very old shepherd's shelter in the desolated highlands of Iceland, turned into a woman's chamber one summer night in the year of 1967. So just about how this idea came about for this book, I had come up with a brilliant idea of writing the history of Iceland in the second part of the 20th century through the eyes of a stewardess. Thinking of the airplane as some kind of a test tube for time, an experiment and a picture of Iceland that no writer, no historian, but this one flight attendant could come up with, because she's in the container and through time, and she sees the nation changing through the period of 50 years. So that's how it came about. It was in many ways a very good idea, but I soon realized that I was writing that boring historical analysis. So I got out of it, but I was stuck with the stewardess. I found myself asking why a young woman, bit of a wallflower, with a mild symptom of autism, became a stewardess in 1967. I got a little bit, I didn't know where I was heading. I got a little bit worried that this book might be seen as a story about misogyny and inequity, women's liberation in the 1960s and the 70s, because I was heading somewhere else. I was looking at the narration and the rhythm of text from the 1960s and the 1970s. So I didn't really know how to present it on the cover, because so just to tell you now that she was a pilot and ended up as a stewardess. And if you have a mild symptom of autism, it's probably the worst job you could ever come up with or do. So I didn't really know how to present it on the cover, and I just want to read it out for you in English. So I came up with this single picture of how I wanted to describe the book, and it reads out like this, and this is the text on the back cover. What hides behind a blue uniform, a silk scarf, a sun-kissed complexion, red nail polish, and costume jewelry? In a dead voice, our hero offers you a substantial selection of duty-free, but when you hesitate, she proceeds along the aisle with her clunky, strong-smelling trolley. Towards the galley, towards the light, towards the end of the astonishing story called Boudoir. A story that begins in the middle of the 20th century on a small farm at the edge of the Ódáðahraun lava field and gradually travels into the highland. And from there, out into space, all the way to the moon. So you get a grasp of it. So this is chapter 5, and it's in the mythology. I'll only read the half of it because it's quite long. Það með hreinum ólíkindum hvernig þessi dýrlega veisla kemst fyrir á svo litlum bakka. Það sem fyrst fangar athyglina skrautskorin agúrka ofan á hrásalati, ofan á gúrkunni, steinseljumóðri. Fyrir miðju bakkans ferhyrnd ílát og þar liggur grillað kjúklingalæri umvafið kartöflubitum og grænum baunum, og við hlið þess íláts stendur annað sem geymir vænan humarhala ofan á salatblaði og sítrónusneið. En þar með ekki allt upptalið, því þarna líka glansandi brauðbolla, ofurlítið innpakkað smjörstykki og ostbiti, og við hlið tóma kaffibollans bíður sjálft kaffibrauðið, hringlaga smjörkaka, smurð heiðgulum búðingi. Flugfreyjan klædd í hvíta hanska ferjar bakkann yfir á borð farþegans, því næst tekur hún kampavínsflöskuna upp úr klakakældu vatninu, klæðir hana hvítri línservettu og hellir í glasi sem farþeginn réttir í átt til hennar. Hann karlmaður á fertugsaldri, hávaxinn og grannur. Hár hans bustaklippt, grásprengt í vöngum. Hann skarpleitur, nokkuð svipharður, eiginlega svolítið úlslegur í útliti.
en þegar flugfreyjan hefur fyllt glas hans af víni, víkur hið hörkulega yfirbragð fyrir fallegu brosi, ekki sérlega breiðu, en það nær þó til blárra augnanna. Maðurinn leggur glasið aftur á bakkann, án þess að fá sér sopa, grípur lærlegginn og byrjar að naga kjötið á meðan ókyrrðin í loftinu sendir ískaldar veigarnar í hólpvíðu glasinu niður á sparibuxurnar hans. Vél loftleiða á 5 klukkustundir eftir til Keflavíkur. Maðurinn ferðast frá Bandaríkjunum og þegar hann lendir á Íslandi á hann enn langt ferðalag fyrir höndum til Akureyrar og þaðan inn á hálendið. Hann orrustuflugmaður, tilraunaflugmaður, geimfari kominn til Íslands til að ganga hraun og sanda, tína steina og lesa í jarðsöguna. Fari svo að einn dag verði hann sendur til tunglsins. Hópur hans 20 jakkafattaklæddir geimfarar og vísindamenn var kominn norður morguninn. Þaðan var flogið með mennina austur í Grafarlönd og að lokum voru þeir ferjaðir með fjallabílum inn í Herðubreiðalindir. Þar var umferð og mikið að vera og skömmu síðar voru mættir á svæðið sendiðir af Bandaríkjanna á Íslandi í gönguskóm og vindblússu og forsætisráðherra Íslands. Ólíkt Ameríkumönnunum var íslenski ráðherrann uppáklæddur með hálsbindi og í blankskóm. Fremur lágvaxinn með svartan sixpensar á höfði. Hann ávarpaði hópinn og þótt hann væri engin sérstakur ræðumaður, var glaðlegt yfirbragðið og útgeislun hans til þess að allir lögðu við hlustir þegar hann bauð hópinn velkominn. Þeir áttuðu sér reyndar ekki allir á því hvað hann var að fara þegar hann byrjaði að líkja þeim við forfeður Íslendinga sem á 10. öld hefðu siglt yfir Atlantshafið til að nema ný lönd, breikka sjóndeildarhringinn fyrir mannkyn allt. Hvort tveggja, sagði ráðherrann, væri vitni hugrekki og óbugandi vilja mannsins í þekkingarleitinni. Það sé því með stolti sem hann fyrir hönd íslensku þjóðarinnar bjóði þá velkomna til starfa á hálendi Íslands. Að þessari litlu samkomu lokinni var hópnum gröslað aftur upp í fjallarútur og nú lá leiðin inn að Öskju. Í Drekagili hlýddu mennirnir á fyrirlestra íslenskra jarðfræðinga en kvöldið voru reistar tjaldbúðir á söndunum þar skammt frá. Í eldhúsinu stóð yfirkokkur hótels loftleiðavaktina og reyti fram krásir í samræmi við væntingar Ameríkumannanna. Eftir fótboltaleik út á sandinum var hann lagstur, hafði tróðið sér ofan í svefnpokann og tógað derið á rauðu húfunni yfir andlitið. En hann gat ekki sofnað. Birtan fyrir utan tjaldið kallaði hann til sín. Hann skreið út með svefnpokann á öxlunum og gekk út á sandinn til að finna þar góðan stað og leggjast til svefns undir beru loftinu. Hann gekk í nokkur tíma til móts við lágt fjall norðan við tjaldbúðirnar. Hann fann ekki til minnstu þreytu, var þvert á móti fullur af einhverju undarlegri orku. Hann ákvað því að halda að rótum fjallsins og vita hvort hann ekki gæti gengið áleiðis upp hlíðina og virt þaðan fyrir sér landið. Skygnið var reyndar ekki sérlega gott, lágþoka við rætur fjallsins. Hann var kominn nokkuð upp fjallshlíðina þegar hann áttaði sig á því að þokan var að þéttast. Hann sá því ekki vel hvað hann átti langt eftir upp þar sem hann stóð á klettasillu. Hann ákvað því að snúa við og halda af stað niður. Eftir stundarkorn var hann kominn niður á sandinn og hóf þá göngu sína í átt að tjaldbúðunum. Hann gekk í hraunu hríð og grunaði eitt augnablik að hann hefði farið annar staðar niður af fjallinu en upp. En þá sá hann glitta í tjöldin inn í þokunni, svo hélt hann ótröður áfram í átt að tjaldbúðunum. En það var alveg sama hvað hann arkaði, tjöldin færðust ekki nær honum, í raun færðust þau sífellt fjær og að lokum virtist honum þau horfin. Hann kenndi svefnleysi sínu þessa tálmynd en leið áttaði hann sig á því að hann hafði farið aðra leið niður fjallið en hann gekk upp á það. Þó vissi hann ekki hvort að það myndi vera þveröfuga átt. Hann sá ekki fjallið lengur. Hann renndi niður svefnpokanum og lagði hann betur á axlir sínar. Hann vissi vel að það var skynsamlegast fyrir hann að setjast niður og bíða, en hann vissi líka að hann var kominn það langt frá búðunum að hann var villtur, jafnvel þótt þokunni létti, og hann vildi síður að það yrði farið að leita að sér í fyrramálið. Hann hélt því af stað óviss hvað réði stefnu hans, strammaði tímum saman kampa og kletta og fannst sem jörðin ætlaði að gleypa sig þegar hann féll með annan fótinn ofan í gjótu. Hann settist niður og blótaði inn í þokuna. Hann lagðist með andlitið ofan í litla lægð og fékk sér að drekka. Það var þó varla neitt. Hann satt kyrr stund, þá heyrði hann hljóð beint fyrir framan sig. Eins og hægan grát, þetta var jarm. Sauðkindin stóð nú beint fyrir framan hann en tók á rás þegar hann reis á fætur. Hann var þá kominn nálægt byggð. Hann hljóp á eftir skepnunni, sannfærður að hún myndi vísa honum veginn að næsta bæ. Og þannig töldu þau tvö langan veg yfir úfið hraunið, kindin og geimfarinn. Fullvissan bæinn handan við þokuna gerði hvert skref þess virði að stíga, þótt hann, þessi þróttmikli hugur og stælti líkami, væri nú við það að missa þrekið, enda búinn að vera miklu lengur í villu sinni en hann gerði sér grein fyrir. Og að lokum voru þessi skref orðin á mörg, kindin horfin inn í þokuna og hann aftur einn. Hvað var þetta land stórt? Hann hafði í raun enga hugmynd hversu endalaus auðn hálendi þess var. Nú hafði vitjað hans lítill fugl, með söng svo fögrum að hann hugsaði að líklega hefði hann aldrei heyrt svo fallegan fuglasöng fyrr. Maðurinn stóð grafkyrr og virti fuglinn fyrir sér innan úr þokunni. Þá heyrðist annars konar hljóð og fjarska og leið var fuglinn floginn burt. Hljóðið barst nær, taktfast og eitt augnablik fannst honum sem það hljómaði fyrir aftan hann. Þar var þó ekkert að sjá, en þegar hann sneri sér aftur við, heyrði hann enn annað hljóð og leið blasti það við honum. Mynd þannig í laginu og honum fannst hún aðeins geta hafa orðið til í höfði hans. Risastór og kolsvartur fákur með hvítt höfuð reis upp á afturlappirnar og að baki hans knapi, stúlkuritari í ljósum stuttkjól með sítt og mikið hár sem slóst til í loftinu þar sem hún reyndi að ná taumhaldi á skepnunni. Maðurinn stóð stjarfur fyrir framan þessi átök, en þegar hesturinn hafði róast lá stúlkan fram á háls hans stund, leit svo varlega upp. Í augum hennar undrun og ótti, en sjálfur var hann við það að riða til falls. Hann gat að minnstakosti ekki hrift sig né komið upp einu orði. Teddy steig á baki. Nú sá hún að þetta var hvorki draugur né íslensku sauðaþjófur. Þessi maður var alveg greinilega ekki héðan úr sveitinni. Hvaðan kemur þú? Það var eins og hann skildi spurninguna. I don't know, a big canyon near Askja, got lost in the fog. Rödd mannsins var djúp og hrjúf. Hversu fjarri ég? Mjög fjarri. Hver ert þú? Ég Teddy. Gott og vel, en ég nærri mannabyggð? Hún sagði svo ekki vera og rétti út flatan lóan til að þreifa á rigningunni. Nú andvarpaði maðurinn. Á hvaða leið ert þú? En Teddy svaraði ekki spurningum mannsins, heldur gaf honum hikandi og kurteislegt merki að fara á bak. En hann hreyfði sig hvergi, stóð bara og horfði niður á jörðina, strauk þumli og löngutöng eftir uppbrúnum sínum, ætlaði þessi stúlkukind að fara að teima hann, úrekan, eða áttu þau að tvímenna á hestinum og hún að halda tauminn. Þau riðu hægt yfir hraunið, var úfið og illfært svo hann varð að halda fast mitti hennar, án þess þó að koma of nærri henni og fanga hana þannig inn í svefnpokann sinn. Hann spurði einskis, fannst skyndilega bara gott að láta ferja sig yfir þessa ógulegu jörð og finna ilminn af hálsi þessara fámæltu stúlku. Sjálf var hún ekki alveg viss hvert hún stemdi, en hún varð að fylgja innsæi sínu og finna skjól. Ellegar eru þau bæði úti því það var farið að rigna og hvessa allt mikið. Hún var við það að missa alla von þegar hún sá móta fyrir lítilli bungu í nokkra metra fjarlægð. Hún hendist á baki og gaf manninum merki að fylgja sér. Hún teymdi hestinn í átt að haugnum með framandi rauðhött á hælanum. Dyngja. Náttstaður byggður úr torfi en af hálfu grafinn niður í hraunið. Hringamynduð og svo lágreist að varla var hægt að standa þar uppréttur. En inni var hlýtt því kofinn var vel hlaðinn og þéttur fyrir utan fúna tréflekan fyrir dyrunum sem Teddy reyndi nú að opna. Hún tjóðraði hött við hjarirnar og skreið inn í myrkrið. Eftir svolitla stund teygði hún hönd sína út dyragættin og bauð manninn inn með handarhreyfingu. Hann var hikandi, aðframkominn og ráðvilltur eins og hann var, en þegar köld vindhviða var næstum því búin að hrifsa húfuna af höfði hans, fór hann niður á 4 fætur og tróð sér inn í fylgsni hennar.
Thank you. We talked about this today, that when you read this excerpt,
Yes.
To me it read like a dream sequence. especially not knowing about anything else about the novel.
Yeah.
It's almost like a weird fairy tale where he, he's in the fog going through the lava field, and then he encounters first the sheep, then the bird, then the woman on the horse. It has a dream quality or nightmarish quality to it. And your the poems that we translated is the dream, kind of a diary of dreams. So I would like both of you to comment on dreams and nightmares, or dreaminess as a maybe topic or a source of inspiration, or even something else. How do you go about it? Do you even we discussed that you didn't even think about it, but
well, it's not a dream. It's a real scene. Is the astronaut journey through the highlands, and the image that faces him because when the horse, her horse, senses that he's there, he goes crazy and starts rearing. And the fact that she's all dressed up has an explanation in the chapter before, because she has just graduated from college, and this horse is her gift. And she writes, she gets lost in the fog, and that's how they meet in the middle of nowhere. And I'm quite interested and drawn towards the idea of, it's not magical realism or anything. No, it's trying to see realism or capture something that's fantastic, mystical, towards the absurd, towards the uncanny. So it's all real, but you're just trying to capture that something that seems to be happening miraculously, but it's totally logical.
Yes, but I understand that. But when you present it in your words, it how do you say it in English? It communicates this magical magical quality to it.
Yeah.
So I was wondering whether you wanted to have that effect on the reader, whether you wanted to produce that.
I don't force it deliberately.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know. It's just my text. I do a lot of rewriting, not in the sense of editing, but I read the sentence. I write the sentence over and over again. So I understand what you mean, but I can't explain it. The effect but I'm very happy that that this was your reaction, because when this book was published, people were very much focusing on this, my protagonist, and her misfortune, and that she was a pilot and as a stewardess, and it was a book about misogyny and inequity and women's liberation, and nobody paid attention to what I was after. Because my favorite character of the book is not my protagonist, it's the narration, it's the rhythm and the language, the spirit of the 1960s, not as a setting, but as a subject in itself. Because I'm really studying the atmosphere and the expression, and even though it's not, I mean, it's only about, it's not far away into the past. If you read old newspapers or adverts from this period, it's the expression and the language is so strange. But you understand it, but it's still very remote and bygone. And I think that's what I like about using history, because I want to focus on what's unfamiliar and familiar, because in between those two, I think there's a magic. Because we were talking about how languages sound. I was thinking it's a little bit like for Icelanders to hear
Faroese speaking, because you feel like you're listening to Icelandic, but you don't understand anything. That's a little bit about what I'm doing with history, on the edge of familiar and the unfamiliar. Yeah,
it's almost at the reach.
Yes, but still it's very remote.
Yeah. And Ásta, what about your connection to dreams and dreaminess and nightmares?
I think what you were saying about the familiar and the unfamiliar, I connected so much to writing poetry, because I feel like when you write poetry, you go into this kind of state, or I do at least, that is kind of this middle world between dreams and reality. And also, that's also a topic in itself, because dreams are real, and you experience them as real. And I can go wake up, and then the whole day I feel like what happened in the dream is real. So it becomes real, and you kind of and you have to tell your mind. There's a clear definition. You have to remind yourself there's a clear definition, but of course there isn't, because it's all fused into something. And our brain wants to put everything in boxes, being really practical, like Kristin was saying, put definitions on it. But I don't know, I don't think I put a lot of clear borders between existing in reality and existing in dreams, in a way of existing. You know what I mean? And I think because my dreams are also really visual, and I dream sometimes that's also really interesting, texts in dreams, because sometimes I wake up with these sentences that makes so much sense in the dream, and I feel like I figured out the secret of life. This is it. Enlightened, and then I woke up and I connect this text to the reality that we all have agreed that is reality, and the text is the sisters grow in the darkness, and then I kind of understand it with my rational brain, and I'm wait a minute, that's the big secret of life. And then just the other day I was having a dream where I had this epiphany in the dream, and it was 3 words, and it was such light through the body, understanding something with light through the body. If somebody knows what I mean, yeah. But that sentence was how bleed tune, tall, sweet fields. And then when my rational brain was trying to understand it, and that's also really interesting with understanding something, because I think poetry is explaining something that you can never understand, and you can understand it in a way that your rational mind isn't understanding it. And I think dreams are exactly like that. So there's also not, I'm making things more complicated, aren't I? But there's kind of this borders are you take the end of a pencil, what's it called? Eraser. Yeah, you take the eraser, and then you erase it a little bit. And I think like that's what you should do in life. Like, that should be your life rule. To have this eraser always in your pocket, and then erase everything you can, and slightly erase it. And you're doing a fantastic job. I think that's like only life rule that you should have. Yeah.
But you mentioned one thing that I wanted to discuss with both of you, that is the sensory quality to the language. So the physical, the sensory quality to the language. So it's not only visual or only cerebral exercise, so to say, or when we dream, we feel through our bodies, we feel the meanings. We don't necessarily hear the words only,
No, you feel
or
them,
you see
yeah.
them, but you really feel them in the body. And I was really wondering about this sensory, this corporal quality to the language, and how you relate as a poet to it, but also how do you relate to the language as a prose writer? Do you ever think of that? What type of sensory reaction you as a writer have, or a reader could have while reading your texts?
Yeah, I think when you listen to poetry and it goes through your body and you don't understand what's happening because something is happening to you or like coming through you, that's such a physical thing because your mind can't really, like with the Faroese, your mind can't really like, I hear it, but I don't hear it, but I hear it. You know, this kind of like, your brain can't put it down, it can't define it or like explain it in a way. Yeah, I think it's definitely, you can understand poems with your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is your take on that?
Well, I don't particularly relate to it. Of course, I'm depicting scenes and images, and of course they're physical.
Yeah.
But the language as being, what did you say?
Sensory.
Sensory, yes. No, not really, because maybe that's because I'm a prose writer and I'm a historian, and
Yeah.
I've never written poetry in my life.
You are the only Icelandic person
Yeah.
who never wrote.
One of a kind.
Yeah, I would never just dare to do it because it's a particular form, and I'm I pay so much respect to knowledge, and I would feel like I have to read from Sappho on to be able to just to compose one verse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But another thing that I wanted to ask you: you juggle, you wear several hats, so to say: academic career, history, biography, your own writing. In your case, 3 arts: music, visual arts, literature. So I wonder how these different hats inform your writing. Like, is it kind of one world in which you swim and everything is one, or is it cubicles and categories, or you see what I mean? Are there strong lines between them? And also I'm really curious about the very practical life. How do you switch? How do you juggle between those different interests?
I'm trained as a historian, and even though I left academia many years ago, history remains my single most important inspiration as a novelist. I haven't done any research for many years, so there's no. I only have one hat at the moment.
At the
yes,
moment.
yeah. So but for me, because I wrote before I wrote my first novel, I wrote 2 books, biographies, what is termed non-narrative, non-fiction.
Non-fiction.
Yeah, non-fiction narrative. And they're very strictly, they're old-fashioned history with footnotes and everything, but they read a little bit like a novel. And they've been called, people said, is that a novel with footnotes? But it's just an old-fashioned, very just a scholarly work. And for me, it's because people often ask me about my biographies, and they tend to see it as something that's between fiction and non-fiction.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there's nothing in between fiction and non-fiction. I'm very strict on I refer to sources and records, and that's it. I don't make anything up, and then I turn to fiction and see myself essentially as an Icelandic writer. I can't escape that. I write in Icelandic. I'm born and raised there, with all the privilege that you enjoy belonging to a nation that has never lived under a fascist regime or dictatorship and never experienced war. So that's the one thing. But I think it's also a question of where you take, where your inspiration comes from. Some Icelandic writers are more Icelandic than others. They work within the tradition of Icelandic sagas. They try to write novels like Halldór Laxness, our Nobel Prize writer, whereas other writers are more into European literature. There's a great interest in Russian literature, in French and Spanish literature. So there's a difference between how Icelandic writers are. For me, I am essentially in that respect a quite Icelandic writer, because I take my voice really comes from 19th century Icelandic texts, unpublished documents, letters and diaries. That's where I got my voice as an author, and I think it's very comfortable for me because it's unpublished stuff, so nobody can point out that I'm imitating another author. It's just there. It's in the in the manuscript department in the National Library, and nobody can sort of detect. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that's answers your question.
I have a question for Sigrún. So you were a historian and then you became a novelist. When did this shift happen and how it happened? And did you think about being a writer before, or did it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think from early on I was very interested in storytelling. I was perhaps more focusing on visual things, like becoming a film director or a painter. But in my sort of 20s, I didn't really have the courage to be a creator of things. So, and I really admire the young poets that do have vision and are able to write poetry in their in their 20s. I didn't have that such a clear vision. So I went to the university to study history and literature to sort of gather my strength. And then I totally lost track of everything and went abroad studying economic history, and then finished a PhD. And having sort of after that, it seemed like a ridiculous idea to do something else than trying to get a position within the academia. But I applied for a research position that I got, and while I held that position, I wrote my first biography. And it's based on an extraordinary collection. It took me 8 years to write it. And I think I realized writing that I could not be an academic historian, because I was focusing on minuscule and very insignificant deeds of the subject, and I was criticizing for not being a real historian. So I started to see just history as a source for making things up, which is quite difficult for a historian. But I somehow managed, and I've written or published 3 novels, and I might go back to history one day, but I don't know. but that's how it came about. Lack of courage.
Any other questions? Yeah, there are two. The lady first.
I was just curious about this difference that you mentioned between, was it language that was different in the 60s than, so what did you find different? Was it vocabulary or?
I think it lies essentially in the expression. Like if you read old words in papers, you understand what is being said, but it's totally alien to you.
Yeah, it doesn't communicate.
No, it's almost close to the absurd somehow, and it's difficult to explain it because I would have to give an example in Icelandic. So it's not the words. It's the expression. Sometimes the rhythm. And
is it more naive? Does it sound, because you said absurd? Sometimes when we in Croatian, when you go back in these times, it's kind of, there is a certain naivete to the perception of the world, not to the language itself.
Yeah, I think that's, yes, it's more sort of straightforward and it's just strange. I don't know. But as I say, it's very difficult for me to articulate on it because I don't have the examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the other question?
The question is probably divided between the two of you, but I'm curious of Sigrún's opinion of writing history, because at the moment I'm writing a biography of my grandfather, who was kind of a famous person 70 years ago, and I never met him, and I don't know him. And the more I get into the story, because I know quite a lot of facts, and the more I use the tools of fiction to present them, the better the book gets. And, I can't lie, I won't lie in my grandfather's life. And I'm a novelist, so I'm just, because you've been sort of divided between fiction and history telling, and do you prefer to sort of?
So you think you get a more sort of vivid picture of him with sort of using
like staging and conversations.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I've nothing against this method. I just don't use it myself.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
Not when writing history.
All right.
Yeah.
So I will call my book fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question, Sigrún? Because I thought it was so interesting to hear you read your text. Because hearing you read it, the text itself on paper has this kind of strange 60s thing, which is hard to exactly classify. Some kind of formality and dryness, kind of weird, stilted in a way. But then when you started to read it, it was just, you changed your voice. I don't know if you noticed, your voice literally changed.
It's my reading voice.
I was thinking about it.
Well, then your reading voice is like a stewardess from 1968 on television, It was literally like hearing an old newsreel, which probably doesn't translate, but it really happened.
I've never been a stewardess. I did apply once, but I was rejected.
How you described the dish, on the airplane dish was like, completely stewardess explaining it.
Oh, are you talking about the food on the tray?
Yeah, food on the tray.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, very nostalgic thing. So your question was how...
I'm just saying, is this your reading voice for all your books or only for this one?
I guess it's my reading voice. Yeah.
Do you have a reading voice?
Oh, she does, yes.
I do.
Yes.
I do?
Yes.
Is it better or worse?
Beyond good
I
and evil.
think it's the same
Beyond
voice.
good and evil. I was thinking when you were reading, I was just like, I would like to hear this every evening before. It's such a beautiful. Your normal voice is also really beautiful. You know, but there was just like something to it. I've never like. It felt so familiar in such a strange way. It was such a. I don't know. Yeah.
Was it like an old radio presenter,
Yeah.
perhaps? Was it that what you were
That's
thinking?
the
Yeah.
like listening, old newscaster or
Yeah.
documentary
Yeah.
from 1970 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Historian.
Can
Take
I
it
ask
all the way.
one more question?
Yeah.
Because Ragnar Helgi wrote a book about his father's library, and I believe that's sort of on the division or the border of fiction and history. So which you can go through that conversation together. Did you use fiction or were you like pronoun to history in the writing of that book?
I just use poetry.
Yeah.
And then you're free anyway.
That's the
You do
middle way.
whatever you want.
Cool. So it's all
Yeah,
alive.
yeah.
Everything is alive. Did
Can
you
I
want to
ask,
ask?
what is the title of this collection in English?
In English, the title is not in English at all because it's a line from Ásta's
Okay.
poem.
Okay.
It's a single line and it says, I will translate, can you, yeah, I can translate it crudely in English.
Yes.
The icy pearls are shining.
Okay.
But I mean, there is a line in your,
Yeah.
can you read it in Icelandic?
Wait, where is it? Yes, it's here. It's on the first blink of the blue light.
Yeah.
Glitra ísperlur á jakadraumi.
Yeah.
So that's the title of the anthology.
Very good.
And so maybe we can take this conversation off the stage and thank Sigrún and Ásta for a beautiful reading and a really interesting conversation, and take the conversation down from the stage and have two writers drink something like a proper and not only water. Thank you all. I would just like to say that I hope this is just the beginning of us meeting in Buksa with you, so that it's not only the festival and then we're done, but I hope that we will see you more often with more translations into Croatian. Thank you all.